Good evening. Again, thank you for attending and welcome to our home. This week on My Thoughts, we will continue with our in-depth examination of Pirkei Avot, the essence of the Fathers, with the beginning of the 10th Mishnah in the second chapter, with the teachings of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Now, in the beginning of the 10th Mishnah, we enter one of the most profound educational moments in all of the Mishnah. After Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has described the attributes of his 5 illustrious disciples, he asked them a question that is not theoretical, but existential. The question is, what is the good path to which a person should cleave? Notice the language carefully. He doesn't ask, what is the correct belief? What is the greatest mitzvah? Or even, what is the highest philosophy? He asks, what is the derech tova, the good road, again, that a person should cleave to? Judaism is not merely interested in ideas. Judaism is interested in roads, in movement, in direction, in the path upon which a human being walks every single day. A person may know much Torah and still lose his direction. A person may possess great intelligence and still not know how to navigate through their life. No common sense. A person may even do acts of kindness occasionally and still not possess a consistent, proper path. The Mishnah therefore asks, what inner quality is it that creates the proper direction for life itself? And then the disciples answer. Each answer is not a contradiction to the others. Each one reveals another gate into human greatness. The Maharal of Prague explains in Derech Chaim that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was not asking for isolated virtues. He was searching for the shirish, for the root principle from which all goodness grows. This is why he asks, what is the good way to which a person should cleave? A way means an ongoing orientation of the soul. The Maharal of Prague explains that Judaism is not interested merely in random good deeds. Even wicked people, after all, occasionally do good things. Rather, Torah seeks transformation of one's essence. The question is, what inner quality naturally produces holiness? And this is why Rabbi Elazar ben Arach's answer, a good heart, surpasses all of the others. The heart is the source from which vision, friendship, relationships, wisdom, and action all emerge. So the Maharal says something remarkable. The heart is called the king of the body. And just as the king directs his nation, so too does the heart direct the entire human being. If the heart is corrupted, eventually the intellect itself becomes distorted. A person begins rationalizing evil, justifying jealousy, and defending selfishness. But if the heart is pure, then even intellectual mistakes can eventually be corrected because the person genuinely seeks truth. Thus, the Mishnah is not merely about behavior, it is about inner architecture. Rabbi Elazar ben Hyrcanus says, a good eye, an ayin tova. This means far more than generosity. A good eye means the ability to look at the world without jealousy, bitterness, cynicism, or resentment. To have vision, to look past the obvious. There are people who poison every room they enter because their eye is negative. If someone else succeeds, they become upset. When someone else is honored, they become jealous. If someone else is blessed, they feel diminished. Such a person can never know peace because their entire identity is predicated on comparison. But the person with a good eye sees blessings everywhere they go. He can rejoice in another person's success. He can admire without envying. He can encourage without competing. And he can see the image of God Almighty living within each and every other human being. The holy Baal Shem Tov taught that the way a person sees the world is often a mirror of their own soul. A pure soul sees possibilities. A bitter soul sees faults everywhere. So two people can stand before the same sunset. One sees darkness approaching. The other sees the heavens opening up and revealing its beauty. This is an ayin tova. Rabbeinu Yonah explains that an ayin tova also means being happy with one's portion, not merely tolerating life, but rather rejoicing in the portion that God Almighty has given you. After all, jealousy destroys spiritual life because it quietly accuses heaven. When a person says, why does he have more than me? Or why was she given that blessing? Or why was I denied? Hidden beneath the jealousy is a subtle complaint against divine providence, God Almighty himself. Rabbeinu Yonah teaches that the person with a good eye recognizes every soul has its own unique mission, that every person has their portion and every blessing has its burden. Every test has its purpose. Nothing in life is an accident. The Chovos Halevovos writes similarly that envy is among the few sins that harms the sinner more than the one towards whom it is directed. The jealous person burns internally while the other person may not even know that a problem exists. It's like holding on to a hot pot. The only person that you burn is yourself. Thus, a good eye is freedom from inner slavery. The Lubavitcher Rebbe often emphasized that a good eye means seeing the hidden greatness that resides within another Jew. Most people define others by their current state. A holy person defines others by their potential. The Rebbe would often encourage people whom others had dismissed entirely, because a good eye sees the divine spark that's concealed beneath any failure. This mirrors God Almighty himself. After all, God does not merely see what we are. He sees what we have the ability to become. So the Mishnah therefore asks us to train ourselves to look at people redemptively rather than judgmentally. Rabbi Shul ben Hanania says, a good friend, because no human being survives life alone. One of the greatest illusions of man is self-sufficiency. A person says, I really don't need anyone else. I can manage myself, or I will walk alone. But Judaism understands that the soul requires companionship, not superficial friendship, not social connection, not entertainment, but a friend, one who assists you in protecting your soul. You know, a true friend reminds you who you are when you forget. He lifts you up when you fall. He tells you the truth even when everyone else flatters you. He believes in your potential when you no longer believe in yourself. In fact, the word chaver, friend, also means connection. A person disconnected from others eventually becomes disconnected from himself. One of the tragedies of modern life is that people are surrounded by communication, but starving for connection. The Mishnah teaches, choose carefully who walks beside you, because eventually you will become like the people who are nearest to your soul, the power of peer pressure. Rabbi Yossi Cohen says a good neighbor. This appears simpler, but it is really revolutionary. Judaism does not believe holiness exists only in the synagogue or the study hall. Holiness begins with proximity. How do you treat the person next door? The person who inconveniences you? The person who borrows and then forgets? The person whose personality differs from yours? You know, anyone can love humanity in theory. The test is whether one can love the human that is standing directly beside him, though he may be difficult or different. The Kotzker Rebbe once implied that loving distant humanity is easy because distant humanity does not disturb us. But your neighbor interrupts your sleep. Your neighbor takes your parking space. Your neighbor challenges your patience. And yet the Mishnah says, there lies the greatness, because spirituality is not measured only by how high one rises towards heaven. It is measured by how well one behaves here on earth. Rav Shimon ben Nesanel says, Ezehu haroa es hanoled, one who sees what will be born. This is one of the deepest definitions of wisdom in all of rabbinic literature. You know, most people live only in the moment. Impulse rules them, emotions control them, and desires blind them. But wisdom means seeing the future hidden inside the present. Every action is a seed. Words become relationships, habits become character, and character becomes destiny. A wise person asks, if I continue down this road, who will I become? Not what do I feel like doing now, but what will this create? Sin rarely begins with catastrophe. It begins with blindness. Likewise, greatness rarely appears suddenly. It begins with one quiet decision repeated consistently. The wise person sees tomorrow hidden deep inside of today. Then Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch states, a good heart. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai responds, I prefer his words over yours, because included in his words are all of yours. Well, this is astonishing. The heart is the root. A good eye, well, comes from a good heart. A good friendship comes from a good heart. A good neighborhood comes from a good heart. The ability to foresee consequences comes from inner clarity of the heart. So in Jewish thought, the heart is not merely emotions. It is the center of consciousness itself. The battle for holiness is ultimately the battle over the heart. Who controls it? What fills it? What does it love? What does it seek? A person may possess brilliance and still destroy others. A person may possess scholarship and still possess arrogance. A person may perform mitzvot outwardly while inwardly still remain cold and indifferent. But when the heart becomes pure, well, everything else changes. As it states in Psalm 52:10, create for me a pure heart, O God. Not merely a knowledgeable mind, a pure heart. Because eventually, what is inside the heart spills outward into every relationship, every word, every decision, and every moment of one's life. The Bartanura explains simply but beautifully, included within the heart are all the other virtues. A person with a good heart naturally sees other people positively, becomes a good friend, behaves properly towards neighbors, and thinks carefully about consequences. The heart determines authenticity. Judaism, therefore, places enormous emphasis on panemius, inwardness. God judges not only our actions, he examines our motivations. Maimonides approaches the Mishnah through his famous principle of balanced character traits. The Rambam explains that the Torah path is generally the middle path, with neither excess nor deficiency. A good heart, therefore, is not uncontrolled emotion. It is emotional refinement. For example, compassion without boundaries, well, can become destructive. Strength without compassion becomes cruelty. Humility without confidence becomes weakness. Confidence without humility becomes arrogance. The perfected heart harmonizes the soul. And this is why the Rambam often describes holiness not as extremism, but as equilibrium. The Mishnah's good path therefore means alignment of the human personality with wisdom and with divine purpose. The Sfas Emes notes that the Mishnah does not ask, what is a good trait? It asks, what should one cleave? Cleaving dveikus is a profoundly spiritual word. The Sfas Emes explains that every positive trait is ultimately a pathway towards attachment to God Almighty. A good heart is not merely ethical, it is mystical. And why? Because, as the Zohar states, Rachmana liba boi, that merciful one desires the heart. A person may perform mitzvot mechanically while remaining spiritually distant. But when the heart burns with sincerity, kindness, humility, and a longing for truth. The person becomes attached to the divine presence. The Sfas Emes explains that holiness is not only found in study or prayer. It is found in refining the heart itself. The Ben Ish Chai explains that the heart is like a vessel. If the vessel is cracked by anger, jealousy, arrogance, or resentment, well, spiritual light cannot remain inside of it. One may learn Torah endlessly, yet the Torah cannot fully settle within him because the vessel is damaged. This echoes the teaching of the sages. Words emerging from the heart enter the heart. But why? Because purity recognizes purity. The Ben Ish Chai says that people are influenced less by eloquence and more by authenticity. When the heart is genuine, even simple words can awaken souls. The Zohar teaches us that the human heart parallels the Holy of Holies in the temple. Just as the divine presence rested in the innermost sanctuary, so too the Shekhinah, the divinity of God, rests deep within the purified heart. This transforms the Mishnah entirely. The good heart is not merely moral goodness, it is becoming a dira b'taktonim, a dwelling place for the divine presence to reside. The Arizal explains that negative emotions create spiritual blockage. Hatred contracts the soul. Jealousy darkens perception. Arrogance pushes away holiness. But kindness, humility, compassion, and joy expand spiritual consciousness. So thus the Mishnah is secretly discussing not only ethics, but spiritual receptivity. Rebbe Yoel Dressler connects this Mishnah to his famous principle. He says a person loves what he gives. Well, modern society assumes first comes love, then comes giving. Rebbe Dressler says just the opposite. It is giving that creates love. A good heart is built through acts of giving. Every act of kindness expands the soul. Every act of selfishness contracts it. This explains why kindness changes people internally. The giver slowly becomes more godlike. After all, God is the ultimate giver. Therefore, giving aligns the human soul together with its creator. Perhaps Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai was teaching something even greater. After all, he already knew the answers to his questions. So why ask? Because true education is not about giving answers. True education is the ability to draw greatness out of another person. A teacher who merely lectures creates students, but a teacher who awakens the soul creates leaders. He wanted each of his disciples to reveal the root of his own soul. And indeed, each answer reflected the nature of the disciple himself. Some souls see through kindness, some through relationships, some through wisdom, some through emotional purity. The role of a Rebbe is not to create carbon copies. It is to reveal the unique divine pathway that exists within each of his students. Many commentaries explain that the 5 disciples correspond to 5 dimensions of human existence. A good eye alludes to perception, a good friend to relationships, a good neighbor to society. Seeing consequences connect with intellect and wisdom, and a good heart is the essence of the soul. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was teaching that true spirituality transforms every layer of human existence. Torah is not confined to the synagogue. It affects how you see, how you relate, how you think, how you live, and ultimately, who you will become. The Hasidic masters explain that the Mishnah asks to what a person should cleave. The answer is not merely behavior. It is the attributes of God Almighty himself. As we see, God possesses a good eye. He constantly bestows. God is a good friend, your beloved companion. God is the good neighbor. I dwell amongst them. God foresees consequences, seeing all generations simultaneously. And God possesses the ultimate good heart, infinite compassion. So the Mishnah teaches, become godlike, not in power, but in character. Bottom line, at the end of the day, every person must ask themselves a question. What kind of heart am I building? Life changes a human being. Success changes him. Failure changes him. Pain changes him. Time changes him. So the question is, will the heart become softer or will it become harder? Some people experience difficulty and they become angry. Others experience difficulty and they become compassionate. One becomes cynical while the other becomes holy. And this is the Derech Tov, the good way. Not merely what a person knows, but what a person becomes. The greatest spiritual achievement in life is not escaping humanity, it is refining humanity. Not becoming an angel, but becoming a holy human being. And perhaps that is why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked the Mishnah in the first place. Because eventually, all of Torah comes down to this. Can a human being walk through this world and still keep a good heart? Well, hope you found this lecture interesting and informative. May God Almighty bless you with the strength and the wisdom to follow the advice of the sages. Next week, God willing, we will continue with the middle portion of this 10th Mishnah in the 2nd chapter. Again, let us all continue to pray for a swift and complete victorious end to the war in the Middle East with the total annihilation of Iran and all of her proxies. Let us celebrate the return of all the hostages, and may God Almighty cure the sick and injured, comfort all the mourners, and return home all the brave IDF soldiers led by Mashiach Tzidkeinu quickly and let it be in our time. Again, let me once again thank you for attending, for visiting our home. And may God bless you with all this good happiness, health, and success. And again, please push the like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And share it with your friends. As I've mentioned time and time again, it's really an age where people are searching. There's so much chaos in the world. People are looking for something that's real, and this is what Torah is. This is what God is, the only truth, the only reality. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for attending.